Hi everyone, I'm Diana here at Sew in Common. Welcome to my sewing room again. I am doing this little bit of an intro to the whole video because in the video I wanted to let you know there are some very minor like stutters or pauses in the picture, not in the audio, but in the picture. And that's because our internet service has been going on and off every day this week while I've been trying to work. And I didn't know that. And we just got the internet back today. And we have it back for about an hour. Then they're taking it down again. They're doing some big complicated something for my neighbors 2 doors down. And they're taking us all off the grid while they work for one person on the block. But that's okay, whatever that happens to be. But I wanted to let you know that that is what that is. But they're just very briefly, it should not affect your watching the video. And this video is mastering the offset half square triangle. So if you've been with us for a while, you've mastered the traditional half square triangle. But in this video, we're going to be talking about the offset half square triangle. Now, the blue finger, I will tell you, in this video, you actually see me get injured at the end. Just a minor cut with my pinking rotary cutter. The first time in over 55 years of quilting that I've ever cut myself with a rotary cutter. And it was while I was taping, but I really can't retape all of this and get it out to you on time because of the schedule with them taking our internet service off. Anyway, in the video, I tell you that it's no big deal. I wasn't really bleeding at all. Well, come to find out when I was done, that was not the case. I cut myself pretty good and I got a couple little stitches in here. I don't like the big bulky band-aids after the first day, so I've got everything on underneath and the little finger cut to hold everything in place. But I'm doing fine. It's sore, it is, but if you've ever cut yourself, you know. Luckily, I cut it kind of on the side, not on the pad right here and stuff. And as a lefty, of course, that's been causing me some problems. But you'll see that right towards the very end when I'm trimming the block out of the stabilizer. It's the very last cut on one of the corners that I do. And you will see a tiniest bit of blood. If that bothers you, then fast forward, stop the video. I wanted to kind of let you know that in advance. I don't want people passing out. As someone who works in the medical field in my previous life, I know that even the hint of that can cause people, I mean, it doesn't go spurting or anything like that. You don't even hardly notice it, but it is there. I wanted to make that plain to you all. Okay. So here we go with mastering the offset half square triangle. I hope you enjoy. Grab your pattern over at the website and we'll see you next week, which is week 1 of May, and we'll be doing our new May block of the month, and you guys are going to love it. It's a very traditional block, but we're going to be setting it in kind of a non-traditional looking way. Okay, so I think you're going to love it. Until next time, everybody, go sew life beautiful. Bye for now. Hello and welcome. So we have recently been talking about mastering the half square triangle as quilters because it really is the most basic and most often used block when we make our quilts. I mean, there's rarely a quilt where you don't make a half square triangle. So we've talked about that since the beginning of the year. And if you've been following our free block of the month program for piecing your blocks in the hoop, then you've mastered that half square triangle. So today in this video, we are moving on to mastering the offset half square triangle, or at least that's what I'm calling it. After really, gosh, I should say 55 plus years of quilting, I've never found another name for this particular little block. So I just have always called it the offset, and you'll see why in just a moment. But once you see it, if you know another name for it, please put it in the comments. We'd love to hear that from you. So here at Sew in Common, we piece our blocks on our embroidery machine. And so that's what we're going to be doing today. I'm going to walk you through the cutting of the fabric and the stitching of the block right on the embroidery machine. And at the end, I'll tell you how you can find your pattern and instructions if you wish to make your own offset half square triangles on your embroidery machine. Hi everybody, I'm Diana from Sew Uncommon. Welcome to my quilting world. So let's get started today. Let me go ahead and bring up my camera so that you can see it full on. There we go. Now this, did I not keep them out? Oh, I thought for a moment I'd lost my mind and didn't keep out my offset half square triangle, but I need to reach into my little box. So you can see I have this little box with all my different pieced squares in there, and set that to the side. I want to show you, that's your traditional half square triangle. You guys know about that, right? And you've been making it if you've been following our free block of the month. And like I said, you've mastered it by now. But today we're going to be doing the offset half square triangle. So what I mean by this is normally, of course, our half square triangle is right down the center. One side is one fabric and one side is another fabric. But in today's video, most of our block is actually one fabric. It can be a print, it can be a solid, whatever you prefer. And the offset part of the half square triangle is just the small piece down here in the corner. And I love these because when you're putting them together, let me grab my other one that I have made over here. You can put them together in ways where you end up with a diamond in a square, or you could put them together where you end up with your little offset parts of your half square triangle on the outer corners, and you get a whole different shape in the center of your block. So I love this for all kinds of quilting, and you can put it in all kinds of quilting. So let me show you what your pieces are going to look like, your fabric. You're going to end up cutting two pieces of fabric. One is going to be your main, and one is going to be the triangle, which ends up being that little offset piece. And let me show you how easy it is to do. Now, you'll get all of your instructions in the instruction guide, so you don't, I'm not going to worry about telling you sizes, because the idea is for you to get the general idea of how this gets done. So on this square, the first thing I do is find my center point, which is right here. And that is 3 inches over from the center, because I happen to know that's a 6 by 6 block. 1, 2, 3. And then I want to count up this way. 1, 2, 3. Now I'm a lefty. If you're a righty, you'd be doing it here and here. Sorry about that. But so here's my center, and here is the third over here. So I'm going to place my ruler on that center, and right on that center, make sure they're all nice and even. And if they're a tiny bit off, it's not a big deal. And I'm just going to make that cut. And then this little piece, if you like to stitch small half square triangles together, if you have a pattern for a small one, use those for your micro half square triangles. In fact, I'll think about putting one of those out there for you guys so you can use that fabric and not have any waste. So here we have our main piece, or our fabric A. Now for our fabric B, or our offset, we have a slightly smaller square, but we're going to cut it right on the diagonal. And you see this in a lot of my instructions when I tell you to cut a square and cut it on the diagonal, because what that does for you is give you enough for 2 squares. So this one piece would make 2 of my offset half square triangles. Pretty cool, right? That you can do that. I like that. So now we have the 2 pieces of fabric that we need. And again, you can do a print and a solid. Now this isn't really a solid. This is a print that reads as solid, and it's a monotone. It's all one color, so it's a white on white in this case. You could do something like that. You could even do something two solids if you like. It's really entirely up to you, because remember, you're the quilter, you're the designer in this case, so choose what you like. But these are the two pieces that you're going to need. Other tools, of course, your 45 millimeter rotary cutter. At the end, I like to trim it out of my stabilizer with a pinking rotary cutter. You can see that here, because what that does is help remove a little bulk from my seams. And what I'm using for my stabilizer is just our good old regular wash away, because I can, with a little water pen, trace my stitch lines and remove it without getting everything wet. And then I can easily get rid of all of my stabilizer from the back of my quilt if I want to. And then having that pinking shear helps to remove some of that bulk in the seams as well. The bane of every quilter's existence, getting that out of the way, right? So those, and then a glue stick, a fabric glue stick, or a non-toxic school glue stick, anything like that. That can be helpful. I'll show you where you could use that if you prefer. And a nice little seam roller. You could use a small, one of those little small crafting irons from Clover, like this one. I actually like this one, but it takes a little bit of setting it up and all of that. And if you don't have space right by your machine, just a good old-fashioned seam roller will work beautifully for you. So those are two things that you could think about having as well. So let's take this camera out and stop it. There we go. And let's bring in my machine camera. Give me just a second to bring that up. And bring it up on the screen. There we go. So here we are at my machine, and I have already hooped my stabilizer. Again, just a good old regular wash away stabilizer is all I'm using. I'm using a red thread today so that you can see this a little bit better. I've got my design brought up on my machine, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch out my first placement guide right onto the stabilizer. If you have never done any piecing in the hoop, this is the general process for piecing in the hoop with all of my patterns and designs, and it is generally the same way for any other company that does this too. A few of them might do things a little bit differently, but all generally the same. And you can see that this first placement looks just like our first piece of fabric. Let me bring that out and show it to you. So it looks just like our fabric. So we're going to, let me just bring the camera down a smidge. There we go. I'm going to take my piece of fabric and I'm going to lay it down. And what I want to make sure, and I can feel with my fingers, that I have quarter to half an inch around all of that. And you should have that if you've cut it according to the pattern with no problem. Then I'm going to place it back up here on the machine, and let me bring my camera back up. There we go. And now I'm going to stitch down this piece of fabric, and you can hold on to it a little bit if you want. You could use a tack of glue stick, a tab of glue stick right underneath the fabric if you wanted to hold it in place with your fabric glue. That would be fine as well. If you want to know my thoughts on fabric glues and using glues on your fabric, go and look back at some of our free designs for our block of the month, because I talk about that in quite a bit of detail, and I won't go into that today. So here we are. We have this completely stitched down. Now it's time to place our offset piece. And I'll just slide that out a little bit. Now I'm going to check my piece here a little bit, because even though this is all white on white, there's actually a front and back to this. Now I'm going to lay this triangle right on my edge here, and I'm going to scoot it so the very tiniest bit of my main fabric shows right there. Just the tiniest bit, not a 1/16 of an inch, not a 1/4, no, just like a sliver. That's all I want there. And then I'm going to stitch this down. And this whole piece takes literally 1 minute to stitch out. It's taking probably slightly over a minute because I'm talking with you, but when you're just going through and doing this, 1 minute is all it takes, and that's only stitching out at 600 stitches per minute. Now I'm going to fold this over. Now here's where you might want to use your glue stick and your seam roller. So before I fold that over, I could take my glue stick and I could just put a little mark there. Not a lot, don't need a lot. And then flip that, because we're doing a stitch and flip method. Now I can take my seam roller and give my seam a good little roll. And I can actually bring this out of my machine a little bit and get that all nice and stitched down. Now I'm going to lower my foot and we're going to stitch this down. Yeah, I thought so. Let me just back this up. My thread came undone. That's kind of unusual for this machine to do that. If you're wondering what I'm stitching on, I'm actually stitching on a Brother Dream machine today. Let me get my tweezers and find out where that is. Oh, it's just right there. Okay, no problem. We'll just re-thread. Sometimes that happens. There we go. Now we'll just go ahead and stitch that down. Okay. Now on the design that you get off of my website, I'll tell you more about that. There's one last step which goes around and connects all of this together, because you can see right here and right here where our fabrics are separated, there might be a tiny gap there of stitching. So the last thing is to stitch it all the way around. I have my prototype design. Oh, actually, I have the whole thing on here. Oh, good. Sorry. I thought I had used the wrong one, but I didn't. All right. So what I'm going to do now, before we stitch that last piece out, I'm going to take a little piece of my embroidery tape and I'm going to put it right over those little areas where the fabric comes together. And I'm doing that so that my embroidery foot doesn't get stuck. Now let's just go ahead and stitch this all the way around and it will connect everything together. Slick as you please. And the embroidery tape will take that off here in a moment. Super simple to do that. You can use any embroidery tape that you like. I use a few different brands, so as long as it works for you, that's fine. Again, I like a low tack tape though, or a tape, if you're using a medical tape, one that says for sensitive skin, because it has the least amount of glue for harming your fabric over time. So here we are. Now everything is stitched down all together. Now I'm going to remove this camera and we are going to bring in our other camera and I'll show you how we finish this off. So let me just bring in the other camera again. Normally I can just flip between cameras, but we have been having outages with our internet and they haven't been telling us about them. And so it messes up my cameras when they're working around here. Alrighty, so here we are. Here we have our hoop and our block, our offset half square triangle. And I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to easily peel away my embroidery tape. And always be gentle when you're doing that. I don't care what kind of tape you use, even if it comes off really super easy. Be gentle when you're doing this, because remember, we're only dealing with run stitches, and run stitches are the easiest things to pull out if you're kind of rough with them. So now I'm going to take this out of my hoop. We'll set that aside. And now I'm going to trim it right out of the stabilizer. So here I have my pinking shear and I have my favorite ruler, and I'm going to pop on my magnifier so I can see. So right here is my stitch line, and when we trim it, This is actually going to become a guide for stitching the blocks together. But I'm going to place the 1/4 inch mark all the way down that stitch line, and then I'm going to come in here with my pinking rotary cutter, and I'm going to cut that right off and trim it, and I'm going to do that all the way around on all 4 sides. Let me come over here, just doesn't take hardly any time at all to do these blocks. And so what I would suggest is to make a full block with these. If you're going to make a full block and not just use them as an accent piece, you'll want to make 4 at least. So I would come in and prep all of my fabric first and have yourself a pile of stabilizer and just knock them out. Then I'd take them all out and trim them up at the end, kind of more of an assembly line idea. And then I also like to come in here and trim away a little bit on my corners at an angle. Don't go right up to that thread. You don't want to cut it. Ow. Okay. And now you've seen me have a cutting accident right on screen. All righty. It's not bad. It's just a little one. I got my finger in the way. And we'll finish cutting that. There we go. No stitches will be needed. And there we go. There's our square. Now let me turn this over. And with your water pen, or do I have any water in here? I have a little bit. Maybe I can show you. I show you this on some other videos, but I come in and you could even use a Q-tip or an art brush. I just get my seam lines a little damp and give it a few seconds, and then I bring in my tweezers and sorry, I don't know if I can do this with my finger bleeding. Yeah, there we go. And as it starts to go away, this just comes off. And now it's already coming away here. And then I can remove all of it, and then I iron it. And then when I do that, I always end up doing a wash of my whole piece at the end anyway. So there you go. And that way you're not getting your whole thing just, completely wet. And that is how easy it is to make the offset half square triangle. Let's close that up before I cut something else. Oh yeah, just a tiny little cut there of blood, but just a tiny, and it actually is in the shape of a pinking. So it's one of the little pinking shapes on there. So I'm going to have a nice little funny looking little scar there at some point. So that's how easy it is to do your blocks. Now let me bring in the other 2 that I've already made, and you can kind of see how this would go together, and you'd end up with a diamond in a square look there. Or if I turned them all outward, you can see, let's just take one of my just plain squares to kind of fill in over here. And I'll put my triangle on here so you can kind of get the idea of what it would look like if you put all of your little offset pieces to the outside corners. That's kind of cool looking. I like that. What else could we do? We could do 2 like this and 2 like this and have them facing that way. I mean, you could really play with that and figure out what you wanted to do. So let me remove this camera now. There we go. All righty. So that is mastering the offset half square triangle. Super easy, right? But a super usable little block to do. Now, if you want to get your own copy, it's just over at our website. It's just a small fee, just a few dollars. For that, you get all the written instructions, and you'll get, this will fit in a 5x7 hoop. So you only need a 5x7 hoop to make these. In this particular set, you're only getting the one size. This will be coming out in our block sets that are starting to come out this summer. and it'll come out in a few different sizes so that you can add it into all different kinds of quilts. So that's coming, but you can get that at our website. And so it's right over there. If you have any questions, of course, you can contact me at my email address, diana@sewincommon.com, or you can leave messages for us over at our Facebook page, Sew in Common, or right here on the comment section of this video. I would love to hear from you guys. I'd love to hear if you have been quilting for a while, because I know some of you have. And if you've used this block before, let us know what you used it for. I'd love to hear from you. All right, everyone. Until next time, as always, go sew life beautiful. Make those beautiful quilts, put them out there in the world, and make it a better place. So until next time, bye for now.